Behind the scenes of Acts chapter 16 is a message that speaks to every believer walking in obedience. This story begins with a slave girl, bound not only by chains of ownership, but by spiritual captivity. She spoke truth with her mouth, yet her spirit was enslaved. This reveals that not every voice speaking truth is sent by God. Discernment is required, even when the words sound right. When Paul cast out the spirit, freedom came to the girl, but loss came to her masters. This shows us that deliverance threatens systems built on bondage. When God sets people free, those who profit from captivity often respond with anger. Paul and Silas were punished, not for doing evil, but for doing good. This teaches us that obedience does not always bring applause. Sometimes it brings opposition. Yet heaven was watching, even when earth was silent. They were beaten, humiliated, and locked in chains. But the prison could restrain their bodies, not their faith. At midnight, when pain was deepest, they chose prayer. They chose worship. This reveals a hidden truth: praise is not a reaction to victory. It is an act of faith in the dark. Their worship was not loud protest, but quiet trust. And God responded, not only for their sake, but for everyone listening. The earthquake did not just open doors. It exposed hearts. Chains fell, but no one ran. Freedom had entered the room, and it carried responsibility. The jailer stood at the edge of despair, thinking failure meant death. But God interrupted his ending. This teaches us that when God steps in, hopeless nights can become turning points. His question, "What must I do to be saved?" was not asked in comfort, but in crisis. And often, it is in our broken moments that we become most open to truth. Salvation entered his home the same night suffering entered the prison. Wounds were washed. Hearts were healed. Joy replaced fear. This shows us that God can use one act of faith to bring transformation to an entire household. When morning came, Paul did not rush out quietly. He stood for justice. This reminds us that faith does not erase wisdom, and humility does not cancel dignity. God cares not only about miracles, but about truth, order, and righteousness. The story ends not in celebration, but in encouragement. Paul and Silas strengthened the believers, showing us that the goal of deliverance is not escape. It is building others. Acts 16 teaches us that God works in the unseen. He uses suffering to open doors, worship to break chains, and obedience to change lives. When God allows pressure, He is often positioning a purpose. And even in prisons, God is still saving, still speaking, and still moving.